Hi, welcome to the Behind the Bar podcast. I'm your workforce host, Teah, and I'm joined by our other workforce host, Gwen.
Hello.
And today we're just going to be talking about what happens when you find yourself in a tricky situationship.
I hope we haven't got one of those.
A tricky situation at work. And by that I mean like maybe your relationship with your manager isn't the best, or maybe a lot of mistakes have been happening that aren't necessarily your fault, but they've been put on you. And the team dynamic, or basically the environment that you're going into work, is probably not the best, or it's gone downhill. And what you need to do in that sense when you come across that situation.
Yeah. And just like, I guess, how to bring it up if you're not happy.
Yeah, I think the real it's really hard, and I think the real telltale sign that things aren't good at work is when you start to feel sick before you go in, like on a Sunday night or whatever, like the night before. You start to feel sick. You have like a pit in your stomach of, I really just don't want to go to work.
Like just the utter dread, because I feel like you've probably had it. Everyone's always one job that like the night before you're sitting there and you're just like, okay, well I don't want to go. Has it been enough time that I can say I'm ill?
Yeah.
Can I just not go in?
Yeah.
Do I quit? What do I do? Like, I hated that.
I think the unfortunate thing is when you're in that situation, or when it's that bad, the best thing probably is to leave and to find another place that fits you better. But sometimes you can't do that. Sometimes you have responsibilities and obligations and bills to pay, and so you can't just up and leave. So what we're really getting at is what steps to take to help you while you're in a situation that isn't the best for you.
Yeah. And
we've both experienced not the best management.
Yeah.
And I think it's, people don't tend to realize that a manager role or being a manager might sound really great. You get extra responsibilities, you get extra pay, you've got a nice title. But at the end of the day, I don't think everyone is meant to be a manager.
No.
I don't think I would want to be a manager personally. Not to say that I couldn't do it or I would be bad at it, but I think it is, when you become a manager, it is more about your team, your people, making sure that they're happy. Less about the actual tasks of the job and more about the environment and the culture that you build. And that's a big responsibility.
I feel like as a manager, your job is basically it's to manage.
Yeah.
But it's like to make sure your team is happy and doing everything.
It's a big thing.
And everyone's happiness being on your shoulders is probably so stressful in itself.
Yeah.
Because everyone, especially if there's like some weird dynamic within the team anyway, that say like two people really don't get along, you've got to deal with that. But they could be making other people in the team also
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Like you just don't know what to do. And then like, it's how do you talk to the person and have that conversation with like, hey, you need to stop having beef, basically.
No more beef for you.
But also how to reassure the rest of your team that it's dealt with, because if also the rest of your team see that nothing's happening, they just feel like they're left to fend for themselves a little bit.
Yeah. So I can understand the manager point of view of how difficult it can be, because it's not just doing day-to-day tasks. It is more than that now. It is the environment, the culture.
Yeah.
Making sure that no one does feel dread on a Sunday night or the night before of feeling sick and not wanting to come into work because you've got so much anxiety and depression over it. But also, if you're on the other end, and unfortunately, I feel like a lot of people over your 60 years of working, not 60 years, oh my God, it will be one day, over your 40 years of working, No, overall, because if you retire at the age of 60, whatever,
Yeah.
you're working for a long time. And a lot of people will come across not so great managers.
Yeah.
I think it's very rare to find a team that you gel with and that you don't have any issues with. So knowing what to do is vital, really. And like I said, we've both been in situations where things haven't been the best. I've had smaller, not so nice things. You've had
Oh God, yeah.
weeks and months of dread and anxieties over work.
Yeah, I know. There's like, I don't know. I've always had this thing that like I'm terrified of talking to my manager because of the experiences I've had with managers in the first place. That me going to a manager about a problem has already been like stunted.
Yeah, you kind of get PTSD. Like once you have one bad manager, you expect every manager to be bad.
Yeah, like your expectations of how the outcome of the conversation's going to go is so much worse. Like, obviously I had a few jobs before this one job, but there was once where I loved my job, but we had a new manager and she was not used to being a manager.
It was her first time being a manager.
She was also the same age.
Yeah.
That didn't help the dynamic, and we were both going for the same job. And obviously she got the job. But I ended up getting very ill and I just couldn't be in, like, I had a reason and I did bring it up to her and I explained and I tried to explain it.
Yeah.
And one day she just pulled me into a room and went, look, I'm going to be honest, if you're ill anymore, you're getting fired.
Which is a terrifying, like, being ill is not something that you can control.
I was going to doctors. I was trying to get as much, like, help as possible and I just couldn't. And I had that thing, and even though I had done the steps that I needed to, there still was the repercussion of you're going to get fired if you're ill. Now, I'd end up getting fired, but what ended up coming from that was I felt even more dread going into work.
Yeah.
Because every day I would think, am I going to be ill today? What's going to happen if I physically can't come in? To the point it was like, COVID was over. Well, it's not over, but it was, the majority of things were opened up again, but COVID was still going around every so often.
Yeah.
And I got COVID like 2 weeks after this conversation, to the point where I just didn't know what to do. So I went into work.
Yeah.
The job I love, or get fired because I've got COVID, like, which one do I want? And then I got told off anyway for coming into work. And it's like, well, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
Like, how do I manage this? And she was just like, well, you shouldn't have come in anyway. And I did say, like, I just don't want more to my sickness record. Like,
you don't want more repercussions.
Yeah. And she just didn't clock either of them. But from that point, it was...
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden I had brought it into work. I think I passed it on to someone, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But it's like, and I felt bad because COVID is bad. Like,
breaking news.
Woo. But it was such like a dire thing at the time as well.
Yeah.
To bring it home to anyone.
You were also, you were also scared about your own,
because it was the
stability
only thing I had coming in. Like I said, I loved the job, and I really, like, at the time I wanted to rise up the ranks in that job, but the repercussions of it was just...
Yeah, because we were talking while you were going through the situation, and I remember you saying you had a lot of meetings where you were pulled aside and they would list off things that you had done wrong, and you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that, but at the same time they hadn't given you training, or you had been told to do it this way by someone and suddenly it's the wrong thing, and you get into this suddenly very scary situation where you're constantly being pulled aside and constantly being told, and there's a record now against you.
No fault of my own.
You're trying your hardest, and I've known other people that have gone through similar situations, and it's scary. Especially if you have responsibilities, as in you've got bills to pay. You know, you can't just leave and have nothing, set up afterwards.
In theory, you can't, like, it's really hard to go higher than a manager.
Yeah.
Because you should be able to work it out.
Your manager is who you confide in when things aren't going well. And if you can't, you can feel a bit trapped. And unfortunately for you, you ended up leaving that role because of that. And I think
bigger and better things.
To bigger and better things, yeah. But I think I remember saying to you, you may love the tasks, but at the end of the day, the tasks are 10% of the job.
Yeah, the management is...
The people is 90%.
Yeah.
The people you work with is a lot of the job itself, because there are people that will stay in roles that the task, the day-to-day isn't so much really what they want or what they like, but they love the people around them, and so they've stayed there 15 years.
Yeah, definitely. And there's like, even if the people aren't so great, like, so going off of that as well, I did have at the same job a lot of like, I wouldn't say, I considered it bullying.
Yeah.
Other people did not consider it bullying. They thought it was mentorship. So you know how that goes.
Yeah.
I did the steps that I needed to do. I went to my manager despite everything else. I just went, look, I think this is happening. Here is the evidence I have as to why it's happening. I didn't want to go in baseless, like, because bullying in a workplace is such a high, what's the word?
It's a big accusation.
Accusation, that's the word I'm thinking of. It's a higher accusation with a lot of repercussion for either party, if we're being honest.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to do it. And like, if you're experiencing bullying in the workplace, that can also aid to you dreading your job so much more, because even if it's not the manager that's the issue at the time, it is someone that you might have to work with daily.
Yeah.
That they might have more responsibility than you, or they might have less, but they see themselves as having more.
Yeah.
And that conversation, especially if they've been there a lot longer than you have, you feel a bit like a snitch, like a whistleblower, and you feel horrible, but you are also feeling such guilt from it, such dread again, that you, like you say, you feel stuck. No matter for anyone that is being bullied, I recommend getting as much evidence as possible so no one
and also say
anything, or testimonials from people.
The steps that you should be taking is, one, make sure that there is a written record of conversations. So
time, date stamped.
If you've had a verbal meeting with your manager about something that, you know, you've brought up that you're unhappy with, I would recommend then sending an email after the meeting saying, I just want to confirm that we have spoken about so and so and so, and that this is what you've said.
What's going to happen?
Yes, this is what you've decided will happen post discussion, and they can get back to you, just so you have proof on your end that this conversation has happened, because verbal conversations are very hard to prove if there's no recording of it. And so make sure that you always have written down statements of what's going to happen. Make sure that you bring things up, as much as it is scary to bring things up to a manager that you probably don't trust. You also don't want anything to be held against you because you were too scared to bring it up. And also, every time that you do bring something up, try to go in the mindset of being as calm as possible. Don't get too heated. You want to be seen as professional as possible, because you don't want them to then throw it back at you.
Yeah, because the worst thing you can do is do it unprofessionally, especially like illegally.
Yeah, and they can use it against you.
Yeah, that goes against, because then it then looks like you're bullying.
Yeah.
Like, you are trying to find ways to psych this person out.
Yeah.
When in reality, they could be doing the same to you, but you're trying, in your attempts to, in a way, fix it, you're making it worse.
Yeah.
By bringing so much like dirty laundry up.
Yeah.
It's like a similar one was that something had happened, but there was no witnesses, and it's like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And so, like, for me at the time, I was like, it's just hearsay. If I say it, there is no one here to cooperate with what I have witnessed, what I have said. So while I could bring it up to my manager, it's baseless. You can't do anything with it, really. You can say that it's happening, but for them to do anything, a lot of the time they need the evidence behind them because they just can't bring it up. Going off that, don't do it illegally. Don't record people without their knowledge.
Yeah.
Don't like try and like push them into a corner.
Yeah.
Get them to say something that they shouldn't have said in range of someone else. That also is one of the worst things you can do.
Yeah.
Because you definitely look like the bully in that situation. If you're trying to make sure that they are riled up and come back at you with, I don't know, Susan down the corner.
Yeah.
You look like the bad person.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, well, why did they get so antsy about it?
So essentially, whenever you're bringing it up, make sure you're as calm as possible. It might be very difficult because with stress and anxiety, like you'll find it difficult to stay calm and collected, but it will work in your favor if you are. And let's say you've been through this situation, and I know other people who have been through this situation. Your manager or the higher ups have got a list against you and you're invited into a scary meeting. Just so you know, you are allowed to bring someone else in with you. You do not have to go in by yourself. And this doesn't mean another colleague. You can bring someone outside of work in with you just to help you. That is your legal right to bring someone to support you and to help talk with you.
At the time, I never knew that at the time, and I wish I did.
Yeah.
Because the amount of times I would walk out that meeting and kind of forget what was.
Yeah.
Even though we talk about having that email follow-up of like, this is what we talked about in notes, still things are going to go over your head because you're being thrown at so much information. Like, well, what do I do? Like, and then you get emotional, so everything does come back at you. And I really wish I knew that I could have someone with me.
So my mum had a similar situation where she was invited into a scary meeting to list off all the things that she had done wrong, even though she was trying very hard to figure out the right processes and such. This was probably, I think, the second or third meeting where they were berating her and making her very uncomfortable. She brought in a family friend who had a lot of experience in these meetings, as in being the secondary person, to help her and to understand and to be a backup in a way. And it's nice to have someone who's on your side and to support you. So don't feel, even though it is a scary thing and you could feel trapped, don't feel like it is just against you. You can bring help into the room. And I think that's important that people should know, because I don't think it is widely known that you can have someone help you.
I think it's more known if you're part of like a union.
Yeah.
Which a lot of jobs aren't, unless you're in the public sector a lot of the time.
Yeah.
I don't think there are many unions around.
Outside of trains and such. Trains and the NHS and teachers,
Public servants, basically.
Yeah.
There are smaller unions for different things that can help you, and they will have the like legal knowledge sometimes behind them as well, what they can do. But also bringing someone in also lessens what they say.
It can help.
Because if it was just you, they could either like raise their voice or something, or just say it a bit more harshly. But if someone else is there, they have to be very specific in what they say because there's a witness.
Yeah.
So
I had a situation where I was working in a hotel. My contract was that I would work 2 days a week, sometimes a little bit more, but 2 days was what we had agreed on. And that was because at the time I was in a long distance relationship. So when I wasn't working, I would travel up north because that's where my boyfriend was. And then I'll travel back down and I'd work my 2 days. And there was this one time, I think I wasn't very long into the role. It must have been 2, 3, 4 weeks maybe. I was working at this hotel and I was up north and I was coming back down. It was like a Friday. And I was supposed to be traveling that day. Now, the night before, one of my colleagues who I was yet to meet because I hadn't been on shift with her yet, had messaged me because she had got my number through the work group chat, and she asked if I could cover her shift. And I said, unfortunately, no, I can't cover it because I'm up north at the moment and I won't be back in time. She said, okay, that's fine. She then called me the next morning, the day that I was supposed to travel back and the day that she wanted her shift covered. She called me again asking if I could cover the shift. And I said, no, I can't. I'm sorry. She then called me a second time. So this is the third attempt from her side. And I very much felt kind of guilt tripped into this. She wanted to cover because she had a hospital appointment late in the evening. It was, which, I mean, I don't know, she must have, but it was like a 7 p.m. doctor's. Either way, it was a strange situation, but I felt guilt tripped at this point, and I was thinking, I was like, okay, well, my train comes back in at like 5 or 5:30. I guess I could get there in time for 7:30, and then because at this point, this was the third time she was asking me to cover her shift, I said, okay, I'll cover. And so I'm traveling on the bus back, and there's traffic, and I'm like, I don't think I'll be able to get back in time. So I message her and I go, I'm in traffic. I don't think I'll be able to cover your shift. And she just goes, oh, but you've already said now, so it's your problem.
Great.
And so I'm, 3 weeks into my job, I'm panicking because what if I don't get back in time? And I'm thinking, this is my first proper job out of uni. And I was stressed. I felt sick that whole trip home. And the bus wasn't even the end of it. I still had to get the trains back. And so I messaged my manager and I go, I know I said that I'd cover, but I can't come back. I felt very trapped, and I was like, I don't think I'll be able to cover the shift. And she was like, you've agreed to cover, so now you have to find cover. And I'm thinking, well, if this original person was badgering me 3 times to cover, they couldn't find it in the first place, so I think I'm the only one. So what ended up happening was I managed to get back in time. The manager had to come in to cover the first half an hour of the shift, and then I arrived. Mind you, I'd basically just gotten off the train, went home quickly to change into my uniform, and then went straight to the hotel, super stressed and just dreading everything. She was there, she says bye to me, and then that is it, and I do my shift. Right. The next time I see her on shift, she pulls me into the office, and it's essentially a telling off of what happened can't repeat. I was very stressed leading up to this because obviously I saw on the rota that we'll be together and whatnot. And my parents had given me the advice of tell her exactly how it went. Do not let her walk over you in a way, because it is not just black and white of, oh, I decided to cover a shift and then I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. It was there was a lot more to it. And so I explained the situation of this other colleague had reached out to me numerous times. I had already said no, and so I felt guilt tripped into covering the shift, and it was out of my hands as to why I was trying to get support and not be able to cover because I was in traffic. I was halfway across the country. I was down the road. Yeah, and I had no car. I was on a bus. Like, there's nothing that I could do about that. And so she then became more lenient, and she then twisted it and said, well, you need to make sure you have a backbone and don't let people it was well, you need to make sure you don't let people guilt trip you into doing this and such. And yes, that is true. Don't let people, but I was first job, straight out of uni, still very new to the workforce. It was 3 weeks in. Yeah. I didn't want to present myself as someone who wouldn't cover people, wouldn't help, wouldn't be a good employee. So I felt very trapped in that situation, and things worked out in the end. Mind you, I still hadn't met the person that I'd covered the shift. So when my first shift with her, I was very nervous. But she was nice. She was nice in the end. Like, we went dancing. We went to a salsa club together, but the fear, the dread beforehand, leading up to talking to your boss or having that conversation is scary. And like I said, it doesn't have to be this big thing like, a formal meeting with a list of all the things you've done wrong. It could just be something had gone wrong that was out of your hands, and they haven't understood it to be that way, and so they've pulled you aside to tell you off, essentially. But always remember, you don't just have to sit there and take it. Explain your side of the story, and at the end of the day, and I know it's difficult because you have responsibilities sometimes. Most of the time people have responsibilities, but at the end of the day, looking after yourself is more important
than someone else's happiness. Basically, it's
more important than a job.
Yeah,
because
your mental well-being, your work balance is so much more important than the role you have. While it is the thing that pays the bills,
yes,
you can't pay bills if you're not happy sometimes.
Yeah.
Now I know that sounds like kind of morbid, but if it gets to a point where you are
that stressed,
so stressed, you're not going to be able to pay the bills anyway. Like,
so make sure you go in with the right mindset. Make sure you know what you're going to say. Like, it's okay to write a little script in your head to be like, okay, this is what I'm going to say.
Physical script sometimes.
Physical script. If that's how it works for you,
notes.
Do that. That's fine. Right, and also remember, a job is a job. There will be others out there. It is not worth.
You'll find the one that treats you like a person.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Because and this is not just in hospitality, this is a worldwide thing. Like, you can have stresses in an office job, you could have stresses in a pub, you could have stresses on a plane. Like, there are so many every job has issues like this. It's a universal thing, and so you'll be able to find another one. That place is not for you if that's the case.
As much as it sometimes is sad to think.
Yeah.
And like we said earlier, you love your job, but
the people are 90% of the job. Fortunately and unfortunately.
You hate the tasks, but if you love the people,
yeah, exactly. So it's just knowing how to go about it, and what to do, because I think that night before pit in your stomach feeling is the worst feeling you can have, because you spend so much time at your work.
Yeah, so if you're already at home thinking about the next day at work.
Yeah, once it starts bleeding into your personal life, that's when you realise maybe things need to change.
Yeah, literally.
So, anyway, that was a very,
candid conversation?
It was candid, but also just a very sad endpoint, or maybe a good endpoint, depending on how you view it.
People might listen to it and think, you know what, I am like that. Like, I do have that right now, and it's not just me. I'm not the only one worrying about the next day at work.
Thank you for joining me, Gwen.
You're welcome.
And sharing your scary work stories.
Oh, I have so many. I want them.
I think each podcast you're on with me, you tell me a nightmare from work.
When you've had a lot of jobs, it's what happens.
Is you come across, you have your good days and your bad days, and we like to hear about your bad days specifically.
Yes.
All right, well, thank you, and bye-bye.